Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We'll make a start. So, my name's Helen. I work at the Postgraduate Medical Council of WA. We're in the health department, and we work in the centralised RMO recruitment and intern recruitment processes. We also do accreditation of the junior doctor positions across WA Health. So we've got the JMO forum. Any questions about any of those things, please come and say hello to us at the end. But this presentation is about how to apply in the centralised process for 2019 RMO positions. I do have Catherine and Jessie from the AMA, I have Maurice and Tanika from PMCWA, and I have Nicole, Helen and David from WACHS, who will all be able to answer questions at the end, and some of whom will also be speaking to some of these slides. So just an overview of the presentation. We'll be speaking about the application process and the online form. Catherine will be speaking about how to kind of plan and structure your CV and statements addressing the selection criteria. And then WACHS will be talking about how to apply for WACHS, all the different ways that you can do that, as well as the Rural Community Residency Program. And then I'll give you a little bit of information at the end about applications to BPT, which will not be part of the centralised RMO recruitment application form, but it will be a selection process later on down the track. So there's a few changes to the application form. Any of you who have applied for an RMO position previously, it will be slightly different to what it was like last year. This is to capture those of you who are on 2- and 3-year contracts, and some of you may want to stay at the same site as per your contract, and we just ask that you please let us know within your application form if that is the case for you and you do already have a contract for the full 2019 clinical year and you want to stay at that site. For many of you that won't be the case, and you can just go in by selecting option 2 or 3, go through to the full application form, which does allow you to preference all the different sites you might want to work with for next year. And attach all the documents that you need to, so that the selection panels at those sites can assess you. And that's just a little screenshot of the options that will come up in your application form. Any questions about those, please feel free to ask at the end or get in touch with us. Okay, so these are all the key dates for the application process. This is available on the PMCWA website, but I guess the main one to be conscious of is that applications close on Monday the 11th of June, and they close at 12 noon. These are the websites that you kind of need to be aware of. I guess all applications have to come through to us through MedJobs WA. And there's a bit more information on our website as well. There's an application guide with a lot of information that might help you in submitting your application and getting all the documents together. This is the JDF, really useful document for everybody because the essential duties and essential selection criteria apply to all RMO positions within WA Health, and it's really good to just have a look through the wording that they use and be really familiar with what's expected of these positions. This is the Jobs WA website, so you can search on Jobs WA for the advert, and you can also search on MedJobs WA, which looks like this. MedJobs is the platform which you actually use to apply, so you may as well go into MedJobs to find it, find this link and click through, and then you can just click Apply Now and get started. There are various documents that you will need to attach if you're applying to different health sites for next year. So this includes your CV, statements against the selection criteria. Cover letter is optional, but there's various reasons why you might want to include one, which we'll speak about a bit later. And then these other documents regarding citizenship, English language, just if it's applicable to your situation. So as you go through the form, the answers that you give to the questions in the online form, different things will pop up as to give you a place to attach what's required. If you have any questions about that, you're welcome to get in touch with us as well. Okay, so I will just hand over to Catherine from the AMA, and she will give some tips on preparing some of the documentation.
Thank you. Thanks. A handheld mic. It's very karaoke. I'm Catherine, in case you don't know the AMA's role. So we represent our members, so doctors. We provide different education, and importantly, for you guys, negotiate your salaries. So that's our main role. I'm obviously just going to talk to the attachments that Helen just outlined, so cover letter, your CV, and the selection criteria. Most of this is quite common sense and is quite generic, but obviously there are some things that are going to be specific to the hospitals that you might be applying to, and just remembering that since you're applying for your RMO positions, that will then influence your subsequent applications for things like specialty training. So the first one is cover letter, which is optional. So the thing that you would, the reason why you might have a cover letter is if you have any specific things that you want to outline about why you've chosen the hospitals that you've chosen, if you have any specific circumstances like wanting to do part-time, if you had a break from service, for example, and the reasons for that. Then, so moving on to curriculum, your CV, curriculum vitae, three single-sided pages maximum, and basically just remembering that it is a tool to highlight your achievements and sell yourself, and there isn't really a place for modesty in your CV. So in terms of drafting your CV, most people would already have one. You've applied for jobs already, but it's always good to revisit your CV every year and think about the successes that you might have had, the skills that you've learnt over the course of the year, and then in particular what makes you maybe stand out in terms of your skills and attributes. Presentation-wise, there's some pretty reasonable things to make sure that you do. Make it easy for people to look and see the important things. So no clutter, don't make it anything smaller than size 11 font, and pick a style that looks professional and sleek, so no sort of Lucida handwriting or whatever. And always, of course, check your spelling and grammar. This is just a suggested outline, so everyone, people might have theirs in different order, but these are the sort of things that one would want to include in your CV. Obviously, in terms of the order that you put things in, always work in reverse chronological order, so the most recent first, and also have your most relevant or most important things up front. So in this case, it's going to be your clinical experience, but if you've got any significant awards or examinations that you've completed that are going to be important in your application, then put them up front and easier to see as well. Then you've got referees, so you need 2 referees. The advice I would give is having someone who is a senior supervisor, for example. Obviously, if someone is more renowned or influential, then that's great, but better to have someone that knows you really well, knows your strengths, rather than someone who is important but doesn't know you from a bar of soap. And always make sure that you ask the referee first and let them know that you've put them down as a referee when they've agreed. So a quick checklist. all very reasonable things we've already been through, but good tip is to get someone to read it for you. It's quite embarrassing to get someone to read your CV, but it's a good thing to get into. So finally, the selection criteria. There's 7 of them this year. There is no word limit, but it's always preferable to be as succinct and clear as you can. The other important thing is to use specific examples. So rather than saying I have good interpersonal skills because I am a good communicator, that's not actually providing any information to back it up. So use a particular framework. We've got these models, so just thinking through what was the situation, what was your role, what did you do, and then what was the achieved results, and then probably goes without saying, but it should be a positive outcome for the things that you've done, and to use active phrases rather than passive phrases, so it should be things that you did as opposed to there was a thing, I was involved with it. So these are just the essential minimum requirements. The first one doesn't need to be elaborated on, just need to confirm that you are eligible for registration. And then as you go through each of these, I would obviously make them as relevant as you can to clinical experience. You've all got clinical experience, so relating them back to why you would be appropriate for the healthcare setting is common sense. The other things that you might include as well, which will make you stand out, are things that you've done in volunteer work, research. Teaching is always a good example to use if you've done that. If you're involved in any associations or committees that demonstrate your leadership qualities, they're also good examples to use. Obviously, some of the examples are going to go across the different questions, but make sure that you don't say please see answer above for how you've done time management and communication skills. Make sure you actually rework the example to show those particular attributes. So these are the additional essential selection criteria for these sites, and again using the same principles but to address those. And WACHS are going to talk a bit more about applying for WACHS. Yes? Commit to getting there using, yeah. So yeah, again, probably doesn't need a long paragraph. Yeah. But easy to do. So that's a quick win. Okay, and then these are the desirable selection criteria. The bottom one for Perth Children's and King Eddie's, that's just basically flagging that there are obviously exceptions, but they rarely take PGY2s just because they're quite competitive. But in terms of the other ones, the commitment to continuous improvement of patient outcomes, clinical audit and research, that's self-explanatory. I would include if you haven't completed research but you are involved in it now, I'd also use that example as current involvement. The second point, commitment to medical education, development of teaching and supervision skills. You can include if you've done any medical education, but also tutoring and mentoring, but also if you've been attending things yourself for professional development, so the seminars that you've been going to, conferences, if you've managed to get any leave to go on those. Then the third point, with knowledge of legislative obligations for equal opportunity diversity, then I would just provide examples of how you have exemplary knowledge of equal opportunity, which would probably involve Googling. So, yeah. So, tips, as I said, clear and concise, make sure you don't go over word limits. People have got a lot of applications to work through. And of course, be as positive as you can, highlighting your strengths, and make sure that it's easy and palatable to look at in terms of your formatting and your headings and that sort of thing. Always look through the job description form, making sure that you address each thing using similar wording, but something that I've been told to remind people of is to not just print that out and sign it as your selection criteria. So that's all what to do. Yeah, cool.
Sorry, who's reading them? Like, is it a community member plus hospital?
Panels, usually senior medical people plus medical administration.
So no lay people.
Okay, thank you. I'm David. I'm the Medical Director of the WACHS Education Unit, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about working in the country. Who's interested in a rotation in the country next year? A few people? Oh, good, most of you. Fantastic. So hopefully I'll reinforce that decision and maybe get a few others interested as well. So the map here shows Western Australia. The large stars are all the stars where you can go on a rotation from a rural hospital or even working directly with WACHS. And the smaller places are where you can go on a community residency placement, and I'm going to talk to you about that. Someone's not working. Okay, so where can you go? So you can be employed directly by WA Country Health, and most positions are for 12 months. There are some 6-month positions. Most of the rotations, as you can see, there's Bunbury has 26, Geraldton 11, Albany 8, Broome 9, and Kalgoorlie 3. So we find a lot of people spend 12 months in those areas. And in Bunbury in particular, there's a lot of ED experience there. Two of the tertiaries also send residents to the country. Royal Perth Hospital, they go to Kalgoorlie. I went to Kalgoorlie when I was a resident of Royal Perth and certainly learnt things that I'd never learnt in the city. It's a really great experience, and I'd recommend it to you all. Sir Charles Gardner, they send residents up to Port Hedland and Karratha. And Karratha is currently building a brand new hospital. They're going to move in about September this year, so it'll be a brand spanking new campus up there. The other placement we talked about is the community residency placement. And this is where it doesn't matter which tertiary hospital you go to. So this includes Fiona Stanley Hospital. So Fiona Stanley, Sir Charles Gardner and Royal Perth, you can apply for one of the lower positions there, going through Albany, Derby, Esperance, Kalgoorlie, Karratha and Kununurra and Narrogin. And these are fairly new positions. They were set up a couple of years ago by the Health Department, and they provide a different experience altogether. You spend at least 1 day a week, often 2 in the community and community settings, sometimes longer than that, and you get a different experience to being based in a hospital all the time. These positions are really popular, and we'll tell you in a moment how to increase your chances of getting selected onto one. So the community residency program I've talked about. So it's just 1 term, you're only allowed to do 1 term. The idea is to get people in the tertiary hospitals, give them a taste of the country, and hopefully they'll want to go back either sooner or later. If you are doing a 12-month position in Broome, Broome also has a community residency placement that you'll do as part of your Broome job. Minimum 20% in clinic of clinical time in a community setting I've talked about. They're all really unique experiences. A lot of them have paediatrics, Aboriginal health, and also very competitive. So I will now hand over to Nicole, who's our manager, and she will tell you how to apply for positions with WACHS and how to increase your chances of getting a particular rotation if you want one.
Hi everybody, I'm Nicole Barbarich from the WACHS Medical Education Unit. I'm going to be a little bit challenged now with a handheld mic and advancing slides and notes, so bear with me. I'm going to tell you about how to apply. So Helen already covered a few things about the process. So the first example here is if you're currently employed by WACHS. Now I don't think a lot of people in this room are WACHS employees at the moment, but this session's being recorded and we're going to show it to the WACHS employed doctors. So we'll go through an example for the people who are currently employed by WACHS on a 2 or 3 year contract and wish to remain in WACHS. Just tick the top box saying that you wish to remain, then choose WACHS as the primary employer. Then you get all of the drop-down sites to rank in order of your preference. It requires a minimum of 2 choices. And then you attach, you have an option to attach some supporting documents, a maximum of 3. Now this area here is where we recommend to our WACHS doctors that they do attach a CV and selection criteria here, because they may have ranked several WACHS choices and their application may be passed between different sites, so that their CV and selection criteria will then be required for the next site to make an assessment. So that's something that we'll discuss more with the WACHS doctors. But for people in the room, if you're currently employed by another health service and you wish to apply to WACHS in 2019, so you'd be likely choosing that second option there, and then of course choosing WACHS as the primary employer, and then again ranking in order of your preference all of the sites there, which requires a minimum of 2, as I mentioned before. And then you go on to rank your other preferred primary employing health services below that. And of course, as Helen mentioned in the beginning, when you do go through that process, that is the longer application process, and that is when you do attach your selection criteria and your CV, because of course it will be being assessed by a new employer. So this is the other example of when you want to just do a rural rotation from a metro site. So that might be that you're staying at your current site, or might be a completely different option, option 3, where it says the above options do not describe my situation. Whatever your case may be, you go along and you choose Royal Perth or Sir Charles Gardner, who are the primary employing services that have rural rotations, and then you will get a chance to attach supporting documents as required. In this case, I would recommend that in your cover letter you do talk about your rural rotation and what importance you attach to your rural rotation. And once you're successful in getting that placement with Royal Perth or Charlie's, after the contract comes out, as you know, further down the track you get contacted by them about your preferences for your terms. Slightly different format from each primary employing health service, but when you're contacted, that's your opportunity to request your rural terms. Now, how to apply for the community residency program. It doesn't matter which of the previous options you've gone through, whether it's the short process, the long process, changing employers or not. At some point in the process you will be asked if you'd like to apply to the community residency program. So that's when you answer yes, and then you can choose rural, metro or both. If you choose the Metro, then you'll be contacted later by somebody about that program. But if you choose the Rural Community Residency Program, you'll get a drop-down box where you can rank your preferred locations to go to on the Community Residency Program. And you need to choose a minimum of 3. And then there'll be another box which says what term of the year would you like to go, and you need to choose at least 3 options there in order of preference for your term. So of course if you're getting married in term 5 and you definitely don't want to go in term 4 or term 5, then just rank 1, 2 and 3. Let us know. You can even make a comment there and let us know when your wedding is, so we make sure that we take everything into account when we make our matrix in the end. So after you attach your statement of interest, the statement of interest to the Rural Community Residency Program is so I told you this handheld mic was going to get me in the end. The statement of interest is a maximum of 2 pages, and your CV will either already have been attached or you'll attach it now, and that's what we use to choose the successful candidates for the Community Residency Program. And we'll take all of your preferences into account when we allocate you to the term. So, other things that you might want to know about applying to WACHS is how to make your application stand out to us. And really what you need to do is just put into your application, wherever it is, in the cover letter, in the CV, in the address to the selection criteria, everything about you that lets us know why you want to come to WACHS and why we should choose you to come to WACHS. So that's, tell us about any links you've got to the country in your background, whether you come from the country, whether you've spent time there as a student, whether you've done rural research, maybe you've got an interest in Aboriginal health, whatever it is in your background that has led you to this point, and then tell us about your future intentions as well. So maybe your future intention is to practice in the country. Maybe it's not. Maybe you want to be a specialist in the Metro, but you intend to spend some time flying in and flying out of the country, so you want to get to know a bit about it now in this stage of your career. Whatever it is that is leading you to make this application, make sure you express that in your through your selection criteria, cover letter and so on. Any rural clubs you've belonged to, Spinifex, etc., get those into your CV as well. All of that helps when you're being assessed on a merit-based selection process. Now, there's a lot of flyers over there, and especially the CRP flyer has got a lot of information about eligibility and where you can go and all of that sort of thing. You've got up here our contact details, and all of the flyers have got all of our contact details as well. And of course, you can ask us questions at the end. So I think I've covered everything, and now I'm handing back to Helen.
Okay, thank you so much, Catherine and David and Nicole. I'll just very briefly go into these couple of slides because this is not part of the application online form. It has been previously, but it's just something to keep in mind for a little bit down the track. So if you're interested in BPT, there are various places that you can go to for more information, and if you want to come and chat to us about it afterwards, we can certainly point you in the right direction. But for BPT in adult internal medicine, basically to be eligible to apply for that program, you have to first get a job with Fiona Stanley Royal Perth or Sir Charles Gardner Hospital, and then applications will be through MedJobs again, but it will be later on in the year, so after the resident medical officer offers have gone out. So there is a frequently asked questions document. It's available online here. We've got a few copies over here as well, so feel free to take one of those if you're interested. And then, if you're interested in the PEDS and Child Health Program, to be eligible to apply for that, you must first secure employment with PCH, and then they will be running their appointment to training selection process again after offers have gone out. So for more information about that, you can contact the postgraduate medical education team at PCH. The email address is here and the phone number looks like it's been cut off. Sorry about that, but you can also contact the college. They have more info. So yeah, please feel free to ask us at the end if you want more information about this, but it's just, I guess, something to keep in mind for later on in the year if it's something that you're interested in. Okay, so these are all the websites that you need to keep in mind for more information and for your applications. And the contact details, obviously if you have any technical difficulties you can email MedJobs, but you can also contact us because we're in the same office and we know how MedJobs works too, so we will do our best to help you out. Obviously please make a start on this now. There's always a flurry of calls and emails at the very last minute and we try our best to help out, but if you can just get a jump start on it now, that'll be great. This is the timeline again, obviously the dates that you need to remember. This is on our website, but yes, main one to remember, applications close 11th of June. And we will now have questions, so if you want to ask questions now, all of these lovely people are available to answer them. And what we might just do is, if you have a question, pop your hand up, yell it out, and then I might repeat the question for the purposes of the people who will be listening to this recording later on. So, anybody? Yep. Yep. Yes, yeah, so that's right. The question was just about applying for a split contract, so 6 months at one hospital and 6 months at another, and that's right. What you have to do for that one is select option 2 or 3 at the start of the application form, and then when you go through to rank your hospitals of preference, you are able to put in split contract options. You do have to choose at least one just single employing health service, but you can choose 3 splits as well. Yep. Yeah, they will be going up on the PMCWA website. We will be endeavouring to do that when the recording's ready, so probably in about a week.
I had a quick look through the sites, and if I'm not mistaken, is Joondalup a primary employing health service, or is that, or can you apply directly there through Central?
You can apply, sorry, the question was just about applying to Joondalup Health Campus. Yeah, you can apply to them through the centralised process, so you can put them as a first preference if that's where you're interested to work.
Is that the only way that Joondalup's taking employees, or are they doing it separately as well?
They do their own recruitment processes from time to time as vacancies pop up, so you can check on their website as well, but this is, yeah.
And there's rotations through Charlie's, like the intern year. So you could get 1 or 2 terms up in Joondalup if you're working through Charlie's.
Yep.
Just had a question about referees. Does it have to be a consultant, or could it be like a fellow?
A clinical supervisor really is good, but that's, Catherine.
I mean, if the fellow's been the person that's been supervising you most intimately and be able to speak to your skills and attributes, then that would obviously be better than the consultant who doesn't know you at all. So it's just so that it's not another intern or an RMO that's your referee and they're a great person, they're really smart. Like, that's basically it.
I'll just say a couple of words on the CRP for Metro. the funding isn't through for that. We're hoping that it will be, so we're acting as if it's going to be, and we'll get you applying, and until we know later in the year, we'll act as if we're going to. The rotations you get sent on are to Silver Chain, so it's Silver Chain Palliative Care and Hospital in the Home. They're, again, really highly popular. It's one of your only chances, if you're thinking of general practice, to get a vague touch of actually doing general practice as a qualified doctor rather than medical school, and they are evaluated really well. I also thought there were some other things. Oh, the rotations, we didn't really touch on what happens to your applications after you send them to us. They're all moved to the hospitals where you put your first preference. The medical workforce teams at the various hospitals will look at them, rank them, decide whether you're suitable for employment. If you're suitable for employment, you'll be put into a pool. And are you notified if you get put into the pool? Yes, you'll get a notification saying you've been selected into a pool, which means a job. You're closer to getting a job. If you're already currently employed here, you probably will get a job, but for those that are externally applying. And from that, selections are then made. And if there's surplus at one site and they only wanted 10 but 11 preference, then the 11th person goes back in and second preference can be pulled out. So you remain in a pool to be selected for the entire process. And there's not really a first round of offers, second round of offers, third round. It's first round for everybody. And then just as the vacancies arise, as people take up registrar positions and relinquish their RMO positions, more offers will be made. And the King Eddie PMH offers come out first, and WACHS. So if you do hear of either yourself or your colleagues getting a job and you haven't heard that you're not even, got one of the hospitals around town that you wanted to get into, it's because we do make those selections first, so preferences can go back in and nobody's penalised. And just one more thing, the rotation options that come out are much more interesting than last year. If you're a PGY1, you've got your core rotations and that kind of mix. They will be kind of surgically bent or medically inclined or more suitable for general practice, and you can get to preference where you think you would much more prefer. And all of the sites generally swap terms once you're going. So if you start one way and then you decide actually it's not really your thing, and you can find someone to swap, the medical admins are generally more amenable than they would have been in your intern year to have you swap your terms.
David touched briefly on the fact that Broome has community residency program. So it probably doesn't relate to anyone in this room, or might do. If you apply to Broome as your employer, in the cover letter you should just note that you're interested in the community residency program. The application to the community residency program in Broome is a separate process, and it's done during the interview process, so it's not in the MedJob system. The MedJob system covers the rotations that are done from the metropolitan area. And the other thing that just occurred to me while Maurice was talking was that, as she said, WACHS offers come out first, WACHS chooses first, but within that we also do a system within WACHS of preferences. So within WACHS, if you've ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you don't hear from your first preferred site, that might be because your application's gone to your second preference and they are assessing your application. So that's the way it works within WACHS. Everybody gets their application assessed and moved through the preferences as quickly as possible, so that we can meet that deadline that you see up there when WACHS offers go out.
Sorry, that question was about Perth Children's Hospital, whether you're still eligible to apply if you're in PGY2. So yes, you definitely are. That's just a desirable selection criteria from PCH and King Edward that it's a little more competitive, and they generally go for the applicants with a little bit more experience. But certainly give it a try if that's really what you're hoping for. Definitely still worth putting them in your preferences if you're wanting to be assessed by them. Yep. They can be. We would definitely oh, sorry. Oh, yes, sorry. The question was about referees and whether it can be someone, whether it's recommended that they be within the last 12 months or whether it can be a previous referee from years earlier. We would definitely recommend that it's within the last 24 months if that's possible, at least for one of your referees. But if you've got a really good referee from, just over a couple of years ago, then still put them down. But yeah, certainly if you've got a recent clinical supervisor, that would be preferred for at least one of your referees. Yeah, we'll be here if you want to come down and speak with us one-on-one and get any more information. But thank you all very much for coming.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.